Hello, welcome to the Prepping Report. This report is going to be about thoughts on gun control. Before we get started, I just want to offer my condolences and also let everybody know that I'm praying for the families dealing with the recent shootings, the one up north in Connecticut, but also the mall shooting. There's words can't express how anybody's feeling right now dealing with that. With that in mind, the past couple of days, we've had the 24/7 news feed of the coverage from the shootings. And besides the 24/7 news feed, the only other thing that we're hearing on the news is all the politicians screaming for gun control. And there's also citizens wanting gun control too. And in the coming months, something's going to happen. We've got to be prepared for this fight. In doing so and being prepared and preparedness for the gun control battle, first you need to call your congressmen and your senators on the state level and on the national level. You need to let them know your feelings about gun control. When you let people know your feelings, whether you're debating gun control on Facebook or you're talking to friends and coworkers about it, or whether you're talking to politicians, you need to use facts. You don't need to use the old Bubba routine. Well, it's my gun and you'll take it when you get it from my cold, dead hands. Now, Becky, go get me a beer. That kind of mentality is not going to work. We need to use facts. Violence has always been a part of our culture. Since the beginning of humanity, violence has been there. The assault weapons ban that we had previously did not stop violence. And finally, you need to tell your politicians and your friends that we need serious solutions for serious problems. Now, when we go back and we say violence has always been a part of our culture, let's look back at Cain versus Abel. That's the very first part of the Bible in Genesis, one of the first recorded acts of true violence. If you look back and you're not a Christian and you still look back in history, human beings have always been the hunter-gatherers. In the primitive days, that's how we got our food. We used violence to get our food. We used violence to get our meat. Still to this day, there are some primitive cultures or tribes out there that still use the hunter-gatherer technique, but still humans here in America, or our citizens here in America, still hunt. We still have that as part of our culture. And finally, if you look back through history, whether it be biblical history or any other type of history, there's always been recorded violence against groups of people. Indian tribes didn't get along, or nations didn't get along, or people of different religious backgrounds didn't get along. And how we always settled that? We've always settled it through violence. Regardless of whether we have guns or not, violence is going to be there. You can't blame an inanimate object for violence, because it's our human nature that shows the violence. It's not the gun, it's just a tool. If you look back that assault weapons bans don't stop violence, look yesterday, or the day of the shooting up there at the elementary school. It didn't make the news because of the 24/7 coverage of the school shooting, but in China, on the same day, a man that was tired of the way his life was going walked into an elementary school with a knife, and 22 kids were injured. I don't know at this time if any of the children are dead, but 22 elementary kids were injured with a knife. One man with a knife. In 2010 in China, 28 kids were injured, slashed by a man with a knife. Man with a knife went into school back in 2010, did violence because he didn't like the way everything was going. And in China doesn't allow the ownership of firearms for its private citizens. They have a violence problem. I don't foresee China banning knives, but that's a major problem from them. Weapons do not cause violence. It's the human that causes the violence. Also, go back and look back at the assault weapons ban that we had from September 1994 to September 2004, signed into law by President Bill Clinton. During the assault weapons ban, there was 7 mass shootings within the United States. I define a mass shooting as 2 or more people getting killed in the same incident by the same shooter. The worst of those incidents, naturally, was the Columbine High School incident, which do not have the exact notes of how many people were killed in that, but there was quite a few killed and quite a few injured. I do have, though, out of the seven mass shooting incidents with the assault weapons ban in place, there was a total of 55 people killed and 130 people injured. That was from the LA Times. We need serious solutions to our violence problem. That doesn't go back, like I said, that doesn't go back to the Bubba technique. We've got to sit down and we've got to think. We've got to get our politicians together with people that work in the criminal justice field. They need to be law enforcement officers. They need to be criminologists. They need to be victimologists. They need to be tactical officers, people that know how to run security. And we all need to get together and come up with some plans. Going back to the weapons, there's two key places that we're going to look at here too that shows that weapons has nothing to do with violence. We're going to look at Chicago and Switzerland. Switzerland right now has a population of 7.7 million people. Almost everybody owns a firearm. Once they get 18, they're recruited into the militia. They're issued a pistol and a rifle. It's an automatic rifle. Once they get out of the militia, they're given the opportunity to keep their rifle, and the vast majority of them, I don't have the exact statistic, decides to keep their rifle. They send it in, they take the automatic configuration away, they send it back their rifle that's semi-automatic. The latest crime statistics I could find from Switzerland was in 2006. In 2006, there was 34 homicides or attempted homicides. That doesn't mean 34 people died. That means it was either 34 deaths or 34 attempted deaths. The website I got that statistic from did not correlate the actual homicides. But let's look at Chicago. Chicago has a population of 2.7 million people. This year alone, in 2012, we're not even through with 2012. There has been 427 homicides by gunshot. That doesn't include the stabbings and the other stuff. And there were more homicides than I can count. But in Chicago, there is no concealed carry. You cannot open carry, and there is very, very strict gun laws in the state of Illinois. U.S. District Court just recently ruled that they're going to have to be able to offer the concealed carry, or at least bumped it down into a lower court for further review. But if you look at that, in Illinois, which has 5 million less people, Chicago, which has 5 million less people than the entire country of Switzerland, they have 393 more homicides with firearms than this country. I mean, that just goes to show you alone that firearms don't cause this. It's a human problem. It's a violence problem that we have inside us. Now, let's look at also shooting death ratio when stopped by police or billing. I'm a law enforcement officer. At any given time, especially on night shift in the small town that I work in, there's only 2 officers on for the entire city. We have a pretty good response time. We're a small town, but sometimes it could take 5 minutes for us to get to a location, depending on where we're at and what we're doing at that time. A lot can happen in 5 minutes. So let's look at shooting death ratio when stopped by police or stopped by billing. If a police comes and has to stop the active shooter, on average during mass killings, it's 14.3 innocent people dead. Now, if a civilian is there with their own firearm, 2.3 people are dead. The concealed carry holder that's there will be able to stop the violence long before an officer gets there. That's on average. If police come and settle it, that's 12 more people dead than if there was a concealed carry permit holder there. Now, possible solutions, there is no solution that's going to stop violence. Violence will always be there. But we need to look at, especially with schools, we need to place more emphasis on grants getting law enforcement officers in schools. We have 7 schools in the county I reside in. We have 3 school officers, whether they be DARE officers or school resource officers, 3 officers for 7 schools. So if something bad happens, maybe it might be at one of the schools one of the officer's at, or maybe we'll all have to respond to drive many miles to go to a school. It would be nice to have an officer in every school. If we provided the grants, not only would we be hiring more officers, we'd help the current economic state that we're in now. Also, during school construction, grants needs to be offered for upgrading schools. The building code within schools have bullet resistant glass in the schools and have bullet resistant doors. That would have stopped what happened in Connecticut. If we change our regulations regarding school building code and we put more officers in schools, we definitely will not have what we've seen this past week. Another option to consider, if we don't want to have grants and have all these law enforcement officers in the schools, it's kind of out there, and I've heard some people talk about it, a lot of people disagree, is armed school staff. We armed the pilots after September 11th. We gave pilots the opportunity to be armed. We need to be able to have the opportunity maybe to arm the school staff. Now, if a teacher or a principal or whatever member of the staff wishes to be armed, there needs to be a lot of training that goes in that place. It shouldn't be, okay, you're a staff member, you've got a clean criminal background check, here's a gun, and protect the school if something bad happens. It's not like that. There needs to be a lot of testing done, psychological testing. They need to have a lot of training, similar to situations that bailiffs go through. And bailiffs are trained, if they go through a bailiff school, in shooting in an active shooter situation where there's a crowd of people. There's certain things that you need to go about doing. They also need to take a lot of school classes. And I haven't been to one, but there's a lot of training companies that offer active shooter in the school scenario. These teachers or principals need to go through that training. It's not just give them a gun. That won't be a solution to a problem. They need to be well trained if they're going to do it. Now, getting away from the school scenario a little bit into the public, I firmly believe we need to get rid of these gun-free zones. I know every business, as a business owner, they have the opportunity to decide whether they want to have guns in their school, or their business or not. But it just invites people to come. If I'm a criminal and I know the mall has signs on its doors stating, hey, no guns allowed, if I'm wanting to kill a bunch of people, where am I going to go? I'm going to go to the mall because nobody's going to have a gun. The little security guard there is going to have a can of pepper spray, maybe, and some keys and a flashlight and probably a cell phone to call the real police when something bad happens. At least we need to arm these security guards in the malls or other gun-free zones, as they call them. But I think we should really do away with that and go with some type of be able to let the concealed carry people inside there. Just because a concealed carry permit holder has a gun doesn't mean that he's going to solve the problem. There are some people out there that don't have the heart to do it. But I hope there's no cowards in this world, but inevitably there will be. I hope everybody that carries a gun on a daily basis, they see something bad happening, they go and they take care of the problem. And that's the way it needs to be. But no matter what we do, we're always going to have violence. So as a prepper, you need to constantly train. It is up to you to protect yourself. I'm a law enforcement officer. I can only do so much. It is up to you to take that initiative for yourself and your family to protect them. You can always call 911 and we will always show up. But if you take the initiative, most likely the outcome will be better in your favor if you take that initiative. And going back to the Second Amendment, with all the gun control debate going on, Piers Morgan put on his little Twitter feed that the Second Amendment was devised with muskets in mind. Well, I wish that Piers Morgan was smart enough to realize that in all our years, our laws have adapted as we have adapted to society. If you look at the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment, we've ruled and we've had Supreme Court rulings that cruel and unusual punishment that was done in the early 1800s is no longer allowed today. Why? Because times have changed. Well, that's the way it is in our firearms industry. We no longer use muskets. That is just an invalid argument. I can't remember the girl that replied to him. She's a business lady, but definitely put him in his place. But just remember, if we start giving our rights away, if we give up and roll over on the gun control battle, we will no longer be citizens. We will be subjects. That goes with any of our Bill of Rights. That goes from cruel and unusual punishment. It goes to free speech, freedom of religion. If they start taking that away from us, we're no longer citizens and we are subjects. Thank you.